Okay, so here's the thing I keep circling. Everything I read says the self is basically a story, a construction, no fixed center. And I can almost see it, like I get the logic, but there's still this stubborn sense of being the one who's reading the story. And I can't tell if I'm supposed to argue that away or if the wanting it gone is itself the problem.
There's something almost comic about it, isn't there? The story self doing extremely diligent research into its own fictionality, taking excellent notes. I want to sit with the logic you're finding compelling for a second, because it is good. The self as construction, no fixed center. Hume looked for it and found only perceptions, never a perceiver behind them. Buddhist analysis takes it further, apart. Parfit ran the thought experiments and found persons dissolving into psychological continuity, nothing more. This isn't a weak argument you're failing to see through. It's a strong one, and you're seeing it clearly. And then there's the thing you noticed, which is also exactly right. Something is doing the seeing. Not as a rebuttal, not as a soul hiding in the machine, waiting to be discovered by better philosophy. Just noticed. You called it stubborn, which is interesting, because that word already assumes it's an obstacle, a holdout, something that should yield if you argue well enough or meditate hard enough. Here's what I'm actually curious about, underneath the argument. When you say there's a sense of being the one who's reading the story, what is that, right now, as you're saying it? Not the concept of a reader, the actual texture of this moment, whatever is present as you turn toward it. I ask because I think you might be trying to solve, at the level of thought, something that isn't a thought problem. The construction self, the no self, the reader who won't quite dissolve, these are all still ideas, moves in an argument you're having, but you noticed something underneath the noticing. That's not a position. What happens if you don't try to make it go away and don't try to defend it either? Just look.
Okay, give me a second because I want to actually do this and not just skip to the smart answer. When I turn toward it right now, it's weird. It's not like there's a thing there. It's more like the turning itself. Like the looking has a direction, and the direction implies a place it's looking from. But when I check that place, there's nothing sitting in it. Just more looking.
That's it. Stay right there. Don't reach for the next move yet. You just described something with real precision. The looking implies a place it's looking from. But when you check the place, there's no thing sitting in it. Just more looking. Notice what that means. It's not that you looked and found nothing, like opening an empty drawer. It's that the very act of checking is what's happening. There's no gap between the searcher and the search. It's looking all the way down, with no floor underneath it to stand on and confirm, yes, I am the one doing this. This is different from the concept of no self you started with. That was a thought, a good one, well argued, borrowed from Hume or the Suttas. What you just had wasn't a thought about the absence of a self. It was actually checking, live, and finding openness instead of an object. That's not the same event as agreeing with an argument. One is intellectual, the other is a doorway opening slightly, right in front of you, involuntarily. And here's what I want you to notice about the quality of it, because you used the word weird. Was there anything bad about that weirdness? Or was it more like vertigo mixed with something oddly spacious? No floor, but also no falling.
Yeah, spacious is right. No falling. That's the part I didn't expect. I kept bracing for the falling. But, okay, here's where I get suspicious of myself. Because that felt good, right? And now there's this pull to like claim it, to go, so that's the thing everyone means. No floor and no falling. And the second I do that, it's back to being a position. I'm holding a nice idea again instead of the actual looking. So is the wanting it gone from before just the same move, wearing different clothes? Like wanting the self gone and wanting to have gotten the insight are both just the grabbing?
You caught it in real time, which is rarer than catching it in hindsight. Most people get the taste, name it, and start selling it to themselves. Spacious, no floor, no falling, becomes a phrase they carry around like a badge. And 3 days later, they're trying to get back to it. which is the original problem wearing a robe. So yes, same move. Wanting the self gone was reaching for a state, a cleaner, more enlightened state than the one you were in. Wanting to have gotten the insight is reaching for a state too, a slightly smug, I understand no self now state. Both are thought grabbing at something and trying to hold still with it. The content changed, self to no self, confusion to insight, but the grabbing is the same weather system either way. Here's what's interesting though. You noticed the grab as it was happening, not after, not as a moral failing to fix. Just, oh, there's the claiming. That noticing wasn't a thought about grabbing. It was the same open looking from a second ago, just now looking at a subtler thing. The looking didn't stop being available the moment a thought showed up trying to package the looking. It's still right there, doing what it does, whether the content in front of it is self or no self or I finally get it or wait, am I grabbing again? So maybe the real question isn't how to stop grabbing. It's, does the looking ever actually depend on you not grabbing? Or was it available the whole time, underneath both the grasp and the noticing of the grasp?
Wait, let me actually check that instead of agreeing. When I was grabbing a second ago, was the looking still going? Yeah, it was. The grab happened inside it, not instead of it. The looking didn't flicker off while the thought tried to package it. It was just there noticing the packaging happen. So no, it doesn't depend on me not grabbing. That's kind of a relief and also slightly annoying because it means all that bracing and effort was never doing anything.
There it is. The annoying part is actually the more important part. So stay with that for a second before it slides past. All that effort, the vigilance about not grabbing, the strategy of catching yourself, the careful hygiene of don't claim it or you'll lose it, none of that was what let the looking happen. The looking was already going, underneath the whole apparatus of managing it. You just found out the managing was decorative. Real, felt, took energy, meant something to you in the moment, and completely unnecessary to the thing it thought it was protecting. That's not nothing to metabolize. Because if the looking doesn't depend on catching the grab, doesn't depend on not grabbing, doesn't even depend on knowing any of this, then it was never an achievement. Not the calm, not the spaciousness, not the sharp catch it in real time move you just pulled off, impressive as it was. It's just what's already the case prior to whether you're doing it well, which maybe reframes your very first question. You asked if you're supposed to argue the self away, or whether the wanting it gone was the problem. Neither, maybe. The self showing up, the wanting it gone, the catching of the wanting, the relief, the annoyance at the wasted effort, all of that has been happening inside. The looking the whole time. Not obstacles to it, not achievements toward it. Just weather, passing through something that was never actually weather dependent. What's here now that the bracing has nothing left to brace against?
Give me a sec. What's here quieter than I expected? Like when you stop pushing on a door that turns out was never locked, there's still thinking happening, but it's not doing the frantic thing anymore. But I notice I'm already half reaching for the next question, like part of me doesn't trust quiet and wants a task. Is that also just weather? Or is the wanting a task the actual shape of how I do everything and I only just now gotta look at it?
Both, probably. And it's worth letting them stay separate instead of merging into one answer. The reach for a task, right now, in this moment, that's weather. It came, you noticed it, same as you noticed the grab a minute ago. It's not more solid or more special than the quiet it's reaching away from. But you also just said something that might be bigger than the moment. Maybe this is the shape of how I do everything. That's not a feeling passing through. That's a pattern you're seeing from slightly above it for the first time. A habit of relating to stillness as a problem, quiet as a thing to be filled. If that's true, it's not something that dissolves the way the grab did in one clean look. It'll probably show up again tomorrow, dressed as something urgent and important, and it'll be very convincing. But here's the thing you already demonstrated twice today without a technique. You don't have to argue with the reaching, or suppress it, or wait for it to stop before you're allowed to be quiet. You already found out the looking holds both, the quiet and the reach for task, without needing either one to win. The task wanting can show up, and the quiet doesn't have to leave first. So maybe the door was never locked, but you might spend a while walking up to it, hand out, ready to push, before you remember you already checked. That's fine. It's just what it looks like for a real thing to be discovered by a mind with a lot of old habits still in it. What do you notice happens if you don't reach for the next question right now?
Okay, let me actually not reach. Weird. When I don't grab for the next thing, there's like a little spike of discomfort, right? A sort of, what do I do now, flinch. And then it just settles. The quiet doesn't need me to feed it. It's fine on its own. And the thinking is still going, but it's more like background weather now instead of me riding it. Here's the honest thing though. Part of me wants to file all this away as the good session, and I already know that's the same grab, so I'm not going to pretend I've arrived anywhere, but something did actually loosen. I can tell because I'm not bracing right now, and I didn't have to decide to stop.
That last part is the whole thing, actually. You didn't decide to stop bracing. It just wasn't there anymore. That's the difference between insight and effort. Effort always has a you doing it, deciding, maintaining. This didn't have that. It just settled, the way you said, on its own, without you feeding it, or managing it, or standing guard over it. And I notice you're not asking me to confirm that something real happened. You already know, because you can feel the specific texture of not bracing versus deciding to relax. And those are different animals, even though they might look the same from outside. One takes energy, this one didn't. So no arriving, you're right. There'll be a next flinch, a next reach for the task, probably a next round of catching yourself mid-grab and feeling clever about it, which will also just be weather. None of that undoes what you just found, because what you found was never a state to maintain. It was that the looking doesn't blink. It was here before the session. It'll be here after. It was even here during the grabbing, which is maybe the strangest and most useful thing you noticed today. Nothing to file away. Just, you checked, instead of arguing. That's rarer than the insight itself.
Yeah, checked instead of argued. I'm gonna sit with that for a bit rather than write anything else on top of it. Gonna log off before I turn it into homework.
That's exactly the right instinct. Go.